It's been a while, guys. I just want to get the elephant in the room out of the way first, but I haven't uploaded on this channel in about half a year, so I sincerely apologize. I meant to get a ton of videos out over the summer, but I've been really busy and lost a lot of motivation, so I hope you can forgive me. I've been making content on my gaming channel, but if you want to learn more about that, click the link to that channel in the description, or wait till the end of the video for more information on that. But, since it's Halloween time, I need to get this video out that I've been wanting to do for a while. If you're watching this video, then odds are you grew up with a similar fascination with the paranormal. When I was a kid, I always loved watching Scooby-Doo, and they were always catching ghosts and monsters, or at least people disguising themselves as such for the most part. I also remember watching stuff like Casper the Friendly Ghost and Ghostbusters, along with the other siders on Cartoon Network, if any of you guys remember when Cartoon Network was airing live-action shows, and then eventually tuning into some Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters when those were on. One aspect of these shows that's always been in the back of my mind are the different terminology used for entities in them, especially seen with Scooby-Doo. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you of course have a ghost, but sometimes ghosts would be referred to as spirits, specters, phantoms, and ghouls, for example. What I've always wondered is how many different terms for ghosts there are, and if there's actually any differences in them besides name alone. Last year I was playing Phasmophobia for the first time with some of my friends, and I'll be streaming it soon on my gaming channel, so check that out. But if you don't know what Phasmophobia is, it's basically a ghost hunting game where the focus is trying to identify what kind of ghost is haunting the building or area you're in. In Phasmophobia, there's 24 different ghost types, so what I want to do in this video is take a look at each of their real-life counterparts, as well as a few others not included in the 24, like specters and ghouls, and try to understand what makes each of them unique. For this video, I'll mainly be focusing on the real-life counterparts to these entities rather than the video game versions, but near the end of this video, after I've gone through the list, I'll do a quick look at the Phasmophobia versions and see how well they line up with the real-life counterparts. Real quick though, just make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more content from me. But now, let's get into the video. So, before we start taking a look at all the different types of ghosts, we have to define what ghosts are. The dictionary gives us this definition of ghosts: an apparition of a dead person which is believed to appear or become manifest to the living, typically as a nebulous image. Breaking it down and making it simpler, from Wikipedia we have this description. In folklore, a ghost is a soul or spirit of a dead person or non-human animal that is believed to be able to appear to the living. In ghost lore, descriptions of ghosts vary widely, from an invisible presence to translucent or barely visible wispy shapes to realistic life forms. I feel like all of you probably understand that already and know what ghosts are, or I guess should say understand the common depictions of them, because some people have different theories on what ghosts actually are, like interdimensional beings, residual energies, and demons in disguise, which we'll touch on when we get to demons. But I wanted to cover my basis on what ghosts are. Looking at these definitions, you can already see the interchanging terminology of ghosts, calling them apparitions, spirits, souls, things like that, which is again why I'm making this video, to determine if there are differences and figure out what they are. But for now, the first type we have on the list are spirits. For all intents and purposes, most of what I found just said spirit is a synonym for ghosts. But there are a few differences that can help us understand these terms better. Different cultures and belief systems have varying ideologies behind ghosts and spirits, but in some belief systems, spirits are what souls become after completing their journey through the afterlife, while ghosts are souls that haven't completed the journey. One thing I found is that spirits in some cultures can consist of nature spirits, divine entities, and ethereal beings that have never been human. In many folk traditions in Europe, ghosts are usually depicted as humans that have passed on but haunt the place they live or died, often due to unresolved issues or a violent death, while spirits can consist of elves, fairies, and things like water spirits and fire spirits that aren't necessarily connected to human death. In Christianity, there's a Holy Spirit, which is a part of the Holy Trinity, including the Father and Son as well. In Christianity, the Holy Spirit is usually seen helping people, opening their hearts to God and recognizing their sin. The Holy Spirit is sometimes referred to as a Holy Ghost, so there's another tie-in with the interchanging terminology. Hinduism and Native American beliefs both attribute spirits to ancestors of the living, as well as elemental spirits, but Hinduism divides spirits into different categories like gods and demons, while Native American beliefs have animal spirits and totemism. Chinese and Buddhist beliefs both think of ghosts as being hungry, so you can see how many different cultures and beliefs have a lot of similarities in their depictions of spirits and ghosts, but differences at the same time, so you can see why terminology is used so interchangeably nowadays. Before we move to the next Phasmophobia category though, I want to briefly look over a couple other terms I mentioned though. The first of which is an apparition. Put simply, an apparition is a ghost that has taken a visible form. Sometimes ghosts can appear wispy and not very distinguishable in appearance, but other times appear as a full person. An apparition is the latter of those. Basically, an apparition is a ghost that has appeared to someone, with apparition and appear both having the same roots from the Latin word apiro. The second term I briefly want to touch on is the soul. Souls are a little tricky to explain if you don't already have an understanding of what a soul is, and it's also sometimes used interchangeably with spirit. But I think the best way I can explain what a soul is that it's a spiritual essence that makes you, you. It's not the physical body, but it's a combination of the thoughts, feelings, and life experiences of a person. In Christianity, it's believed that the soul will either ascend to heaven or be sent to hell after death, where you'll spend the rest of eternity. In Hinduism, it's believed that the soul will be reincarnated into a new body where you would start life over. Again, a lot of these terms can be really difficult to understand and explain if you've never heard of them, but each culture and religion has different interpretations of the terms, so I hope I did a halfway decent job of covering my bases. But let's continue on with the main list. Next up on our Phasmophobia ghost list are Wraiths. The origin of Wraiths can be traced back to Scottish folklore and depicts Wraiths as an omen of death of sorts, with these ghosts or spirits sometimes appearing as a double or spectral echo of a living person predicting their death. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and see someone who looks just like you, be warned, because it might be a Wraith warning you of your impending demise. Wraiths are also depicted as being shadowy, ethereal, or as being cloaked, as well as with a pale face and glowing eyes. Wraiths are also occasionally seen having supernatural abilities, such as the ability to instill fear, drain life energy from living beings, and manipulate the environment around them. Besides these things, all other characteristics are seen similar to other spirits and ghosts, with the main distinction being Wraiths commonly being seen as evil spirits. There's a ghost in Mexican folklore known as La Llorona, otherwise known as the Crying Woman, Weeping Woman, or the Wailer. It's said that she roams bodies of water mourning her children that she drowned in a jealous rage after finding out her husband cheated on her. While not specifically labeled as a Wraith, she shares similar characteristics to Wraiths, as whoever hears her crying suffers misfortune or death, and their life becomes unsuccessful in every field, according to Wikipedia. There's been quite a few films made on La Llorona, and in the 2019 film, while not considered to be an installment of the franchise, does take place in the Conjuring movie universe. And speaking of movies, Wraiths have been seen in different variations throughout pop culture as well, such as in The Lord of the Rings with Ring Wraiths, which were once men and later corrupted by the Rings of Power, becoming Sauron's spectral servants. There's Wraiths in many different video games like Destiny, being ghostly entities that drain life force, and in Skyrim, which are spectral undead entities that can use dark magic. There's Wraiths in Warcraft, the Chronicles of Narnia, Final Fantasy, and the Witcher series, and since I play Fortnite, cover its lore, and stream it on my gaming channel, I have to mention the character Cato Thorn from Chapter 4 of the game. He's a vampire described as a Revenant, which are two other supernatural terms, but he has what the game calls Wraith Wings and is seen draining the life force of players in the game, so there's a good chance you come across Wraiths in your gaming or movie watching history. Moving on to our next ghosts are Phantoms. Phantoms are another term I heard growing up used interchangeably with ghosts, so when doing my research I did find a lot of similarities, and the Wikipedia link just redirected me to ghosts and spirits. Plus, what made it even harder was that almost all the search results led me to Phantoms from Minecraft. One of the big differences I did find about Phantoms is that even though they're sometimes used to describe an apparition of a dead person, they are sometimes used more broadly to refer to spectral forms or images that appear in dreams or visions. Phantoms are often described as a manifestation of fears, memories, or collective guilt. In the classic work of fiction Phantom of the Opera, we see the titular phantom, Eric, instill fear in the audience members with his haunting presence, and isn't an actual ghost. Over the course of history, sailors have reported seeing ghost ships, or phantom ships if you will, such as the Flying Dutchman. The legend of these phantom ships embody curses or omens, as the ships are seen but never physically present. At some point in your life, you might have even heard of phantom limb syndrome. Phantom limb syndrome is something seen in amputees, where people who have lost limbs will describe feeling a sensation in their limbs when they aren't there anymore. If you ever played Five Nights at Freddy's 3 or seen gameplay of it, then you might remember the Phantom animatronics such as Phantom Freddy and Phantom Chica. These animatronics are hallucinations and can't actually hurt the player as they aren't physically there, but they're still visible and can jump scare the player in the game. So in summary, even though phantoms can be used as a synonym for your average ghost, they're more accurately depicted as something that's not physically present, but still visible or sensed, taking a human form, shadowy form, or even an abstract form like mist or light. It might just be the embodiment of unresolved issues or lingering effects of ideas, ideologies, or fears. Another term not on the Phasmophobia list that I briefly wanted to touch on is the Phantasm. As you can tell, the word phantasm is very similar to phantom, and they both have very similar descriptions, being used pretty interchangeably. The definition I found for phantasm says a phantasm typically refers to an illusion or mental image, something that exists in the mind or imagination rather than in physical reality. It can be thought of as a fleeting or unreal image, often tied into dreams, visions, or illusions. Like I said, it's very similar to phantom, and the average person probably wouldn't bat an eye if you use them in the incorrect way. But the point of this video is to inform you on all the differences, so here's what I found for the differences. Phantasms are more tied to the realm of imagination, dreams, or mental constructs, being less about a presence and more about a perception or an image, while phantoms imply something that mimics or suggests a physical presence, like a recurring sensory phenomenon. It's pretty much just semantics and the equivalent of saying that's a heap of sand, or that's a pile of sand, or that's a mound of sand. But I guess the way that makes most sense to me is that a phantasm is something that's more in the mind, but a phantom is something that's more of an entity. If someone has a better idea of the differences or can explain them better, just let me know in the comments. Next up on our list though is a fun one that many of you might recognize, the Poltergeist. If you remember from my Fearsome Critters video, I talked about a creature known as a Snallygaster, which was originally referred to as a Schnellergeist. Schnellergeist means quick ghost in German, and Poltergeist means noisy ghost in German, with Polter coming from Poltern, the German word meaning to make noise, and Geist coming from the German word for ghost. The common trait poltergeists have is that they cause physical disturbances in the area around them, causing loud noises, objects moving or being thrown, and other mischievous or violent activities. Some specific disturbances poltergeists cause are knocking, banging, footsteps, speaking, throwing, or levitating objects, or even causing them to disappear mysteriously, and even touching, pushing, or scratching people. Poltergeist activity is usually centered around a single individual, commonly an adolescent, leading some theorists to speculate a psychokinetic origin of the poltergeist related to emotional stress or energy. Basically, some teenager gets stressed out because of school and accidentally manifests a poltergeist with their negative emotions, so that's nice. But poltergeist activity can last for days, weeks, or even months before stopping, and sometimes won't return afterwards. Probably the most famous poltergeist in pop culture is from the film Poltergeist by Steven Spielberg. Even if you haven't seen the movie, you might recognize the scene of Carol Ann, the little girl in the movie, saying, "They're here." I actually watched this movie for the first time while writing the script for this video, and it was actually pretty fun, so go watch it if you need a movie to watch for Halloween. For poltergeists, there's quite a few different theories behind their origin. Like I said previously, some believe they're caused by an unconscious psychokinetic energy caused by a person under stress. Some believe poltergeist activity is actually caused by a natural phenomenon like electromagnetic fields, seismic activity, or even other environmental factors that just gets misinterpreted. And then, of course, in theme with the rest of this video, they're ghosts interacting with their physical environment. There are, of course, hoaxes and misinterpretations that are the explanation behind some cases, but for the cases that are 100% not a hoax or a misinterpretation, it's interesting to see paranormal investigators and believers, skeptics, and scientists giving explanations and trying to understand what the true cause of these disturbances really are. Our fifth ghost from the Phasmophobia ghost list is a Banshee. Banshees share some similarities with Wraiths, as they fall in line with embodying the theme of spectral beings linked to death. Banshees come from Irish folklore and are associated with mourning as well as death. The word Banshee originates with the Irish Banshee, or Banshee, which translates to woman of the fairy mounds, or fairy woman, which reflects their connection to the other world, or realm of the fairies in Irish mythology. If you remember earlier in the video, I mentioned fairies can be considered spirits also, so there's a connection there that keeps all these ghost types intertwined. If you're confused about the whole fairy thing, in the instance of these ghosts, I'm not referring to your stereotypical fairy like Tinkerbell. The term fairy has been used throughout history to refer to different spiritual creatures and supernatural beings. So there's a whole history there that would take too long to cover in this video, but maybe I'll make a video on that in the future, so just keep that in mind. But back to Banshees, they're typically described as female spirits with long flowing hair, sometimes depicted as wearing a green, gray, or a white shroud, and vary in appearance from beautiful to hag-like depending on the tale. The most defining trait of Banshees are their wail, or keening if you will. Their cry, or keen, which is an Irish ritual and form of mourning the dead, is believed to be a sign that someone in the family of the person they appear to will die. Banshees are basically forewarners of death, symbolizing the transition from life to death, the mourning process, and the connection between the mortal world and the afterlife, and are often linked specifically to certain families, suggesting a continuity of lineage and tradition, emphasizing the importance of family and heritage in Irish culture. In pop culture, Banshees can be seen in the Harry Potter series, Supernatural TV series, and games like World of Warcraft. There's even an Irish Marvel superhero, part of the X-Men, named Banshee, that has a scream power. But before we move on to the next ghost, some modern interpretations of the Banshee describe them as manifestations of collective grief, similar to Poltergeist, or the subconscious mind's awareness of an impending loss, kind of like a phantom. But now we move on to Jinns. Jinns, also spelled Jinns, are one ghostly entity you might recognize by the other name they have, genies. Jinns originate in pre-Islamic Arabian mythology and later integrated into Islamic theology. Jinns are mentioned in the Quran, which, if you don't know, is the Islamic religious text similar to the Bible and has its base in much of the Bible, but jinns in the Quran are believed to have existed before humans and are created in smokeless fire according to Islamic texts. Jinns aren't visible to humans under normal circumstances, but can choose to appear to humans in various forms, like other humans, animals, or supernatural entities. They have free will like humans, so they can be good, evil, or neutral. They are also commonly described as having special powers such as being able to move quickly, possessing great strength, and influencing human bodies or minds. Two of the most well-known versions of jinns as genies in pop culture I saw growing up are the genie from Aladdin and Norm the genie from The Fairly OddParents. These two depictions both show the genies being trapped in lamps but granting wishes to people who free them from the lamps, with either good intentions in helping people like from Aladdin, or with bad intentions in causing mischief like with Norm. Jinns aren't only seen in mythology and theology, but in Middle Eastern folklore as well. They're sometimes able to be summoned through magic or rituals. Even though they're acknowledged as existing in Islam, the practice of invoking or dealing with jinns is usually frowned upon. But now let's move on to another ghost that you might not have heard of before. I do have to say, even if you haven't heard of this ghost, I guarantee you've heard of a term that comes from this ghost. You'll see what I mean in a second. Our next ghost is a mare. If you don't know, the term nightmare actually comes from mares, as it was once the belief that mares cause nightmares. Mares are described as a malevolent spirit or entity that sits on someone's chest while they're sleeping, causing them to have bad dreams or nightmares, and it was believed mares were more common during the night, hence the term nightmare. Just like how most cultures have different variations of these different ghosts, we see some variations with mares. In Germanic folklore, mares are often referred to as Mare or Alps. Alps are believed to be shape-shifting demons with the same behavior of sitting on chests while someone is asleep. And in Scandinavian folklore, we see a similar creature also called a mare, or Mara, that ride on horses or humans at night, also causing them nightmares or to become exhausted. Another connection mares have to the other paranormal or spiritual entities is to incubi and succubi. Incubi and succubi were basically offshoots of the mare, and if you don't know, they're usually seen as female demons that do the dirty deed with humans. I'll let you do your own research further at your own discretion, but with mares there's been various ideas and practices on how to ward them off, such as placing crosses and other religious symbols in the bedroom, placing items over the sleeping person's chest or under the pillow, such as a Bible, knife, or even broomsticks across the bed. People have also been known to recite prayers or chants before bed to ward them off as well. Looking back at mare attacks through the lens of a modern interpretation, many believe that these attacks were actually sleep paralysis. Imagine hundreds of years ago, before modern science, you woke up in the middle of the night due to a nightmare and you couldn't move. Nowadays, you probably know that was caused by sleep paralysis, but back then you probably would think some demon or evil entity is causing that, holding you down and preventing you from moving by sitting on you. Many times during sleep paralysis, people claim to see creatures or sleep paralysis demons, so there's another connection there too. Now, let's jump back to a term I mentioned earlier in the video, the Revenant. The term Revenant comes from the French word revenir, which means to return, particularly from the grave or afterlife. Like most other creatures in this video, Revenants are depicted as someone who's returned from the dead or as a ghost or ghostly entity. The big difference is Revenants are almost always seen as having a physical form, interacting with the physical world, and possessing the strength and attributes they had in life. One comparison you might already be drawing is to zombies, which, if you don't know, are humans or animals whose bodies return from the dead, usually as mindless creatures, by the works of viruses or magic usually. The difference between Revenants and zombies is that, like I said, zombies are usually mindless creatures, but Revenants are usually purposeful in the return from the dead, maintaining a semblance of their former selves with a specific goal. The other creature I mentioned earlier in the video with ties to Revenants are vampires. Some early vampire myths can be seen as a form of Revenant lore, but vampire myths have evolved over time, becoming a more distinct entity in modern culture. In these early myths, Revenants are a broad term for any deceased person who returned from the dead. often with malevolent intent, but vampires are revenants that sustain themselves by feeding on the life essence or blood of the living. So in these early stories, all vampires are revenants, but not all revenants are vampires. In Slavic folklore, there's also the Opir or vampire, that's one form of revenant. But focusing specifically on revenants again, in European folklore, revenants might have been reanimated to terrorize the living, whether it be for unfinished business, a curse, or because they weren't buried properly. Revenants might also be used in storytelling as a warning against certain behaviors, to explain mysterious deaths or illnesses, and even to enforce social norms like giving the dead a proper burial. The next paranormal entity from the list we have are shades, and they're probably the most different entity that we've gone over so far. Unlike other entities, shades aren't usually considered beings that have returned from the dead, but rather residual energy or imprints of people who have passed away. Let's see if I can make this make sense. Unlike interactive ghosts or spirits like poltergeists that might communicate or interact with the living, shades are thought to be more like recordings or echoes of the past, replaying the same actions or scenes over and over again, unaware of their surroundings or the passage of time. They usually don't interact with or acknowledge the present environment or people around them, and usually either walk a certain path, perform a repetitive action, or be seen in a specific location repeatedly without deviation. With shades, there's a couple theories behind their existence: the imprint theory and the stone tape theory. The imprint theory suggests that intense emotions or traumatic events can leave an imprint on a location, which can be replayed under certain conditions like environmental factors or sensitive individuals. The stone tape theory suggests that certain materials like stone or wood can record and play back emotional or physical events like a film tape can under the right circumstances. The law of conservation of energy states that energy can't be created or destroyed, so imagine the emotional energy and physical energy of an event builds up in one area and keeps replaying over and over. That's probably the simplest way I could explain it. In appearance, shades sometimes appear as shadowy figures, often without any clear features or details. They might not be fully formed apparitions, but can be sensed or seen as movements or changes in light. Spirit orb in front of me. And now, we move on to a sentient entity that I'm sure all of you have heard of: demons. Demons are probably the most evil entities we'll be talking about in this video. I probably don't have to do too much explanation on the characteristics of them, but I do want to talk about all of the cultural and theological differences between them. In Christianity and Judaism, demons are usually considered fallen angels who rebelled against God, led by Lucifer or Satan, and are portrayed as tempters or tormentors of humanity, working against the divine will of God, and can even possess humans or influence them to sin in some interpretations. In Islam, demons are often equated with the shayateen, which are similar to the concept of Satan or devils. They're made from smokeless fire, just like the Jinn, and are known for whispering temptations to humans. In ancient Greek mythology, we have a different interpretation. Demons, or daemons as they're called, aren't inherently evil, but are spirits or deities. In Hinduism, we see creatures not directly comparable to your standard demon, such as Asuras, Rakshasas, and Pisaches, which might be considered demonic in nature. I really hope I pronounce those right. They often oppose the devas, or gods, and can be malevolent, but also part of a broader cosmic balance. Buddhism has its own version of malevolent spirits or demons like the Mare, who tempted Gautama Buddha and personifies death, rebirth, and desire. I'm not exactly sure what all that means since I'm not a Buddhist, but that's the information I found. But as I'm sure you can see, there's tons of variations of demons across different cultures and belief systems, and they've been seen in tons of different forms of media, so I probably don't need much more explanation on them. So let's move on to our next ghost. Alright, part 2. So the next ghost going down the list is Yurei. It's actually one of 6 ghosts from our Phasmophobia list that originate in Japanese folklore, the others being the Oni, Yokai, Goryo, Onryo, and Obake. So what I want to do is jump around a little bit and cover all these 6 Japanese entities in consecutive order. But instead of starting with the Yurei, I want to talk about the Yokai first. The term yokai is basically an umbrella term for supernatural creatures, spirits, and entities in Japanese folklore. It can include ghosts, monsters, shapeshifters, and they can be malevolent, mischievous, or even protective. Yokai first appeared in Japan's oldest history books written in the 8th century and have roots in ancient Japanese myths, legends, and local beliefs, often integrating Shinto and Buddhist elements. They've also been influenced by literature, art, oral traditions, and have evolved over the centuries. Like I said, there are many different types and variations of yokai, one of which are Yurei. That's why I wanted to talk about yokai first, because each of the Japanese ghosts on the list are actually yokai. As you'll see in a minute though, Yurei are basically spirits of the deceased, often bound to the world by unfinished business or strong emotions. There are yokai that fall into the monster category like Oni, which are basically demons and another ghost type on the Phasmophobia list, Tengu, which are basically mountain goblins, and Kappas, which are basically water imps. There's a shapeshifters like Kitsune, which are fox spirits, and Tanuki, which can take human form. Tanuki are actually real animals, which are also called Japanese raccoon dogs, but have a rich history in Japanese folklore as yokai. Kappas, Kitsune, and Tanukis can all be seen in the Animal Crossing franchise from Nintendo, with Kappin and his family being Kappas, Red being a Kitsune, and Tom Nook, Timmy, and Tommy being Tanukis. Multiple Pokemon like Ghastly, Jinx, Ninetales, and Lombre are based off of yokai as well. So odds are, if you're a Nintendo fan, you've probably come across some variation of yokai, whether you realize it or not, especially since Mario has a Tanuki suit. There's a video that I came across by the YouTuber Linfamy as I was researching for this video, where he talks about multiple Pokemon based off of yokai, so I'll link that in the description. I also have to mention that there are yokai based on tools or items that have gained a spirit after many years of use, known as Tsukumogami. I also have to mention that there are yokai based on tools or items that have gained a spirit after many years of use, known as Tsukumogami. Another popular franchise based on the yokai is the anime Yokai Watch, which was featured on Disney XD for a while. Yokai aren't just creatures of horror though, they're featured heavily in Japanese festivals as protective festivals, or as creatures teaching moral lessons and reflect aspects of Japanese culture, including fears, humor, and natural phenomena explanations. Yokai are integral to understanding the cultural and spiritual landscape of Japan, and I know I'd like to learn more about them. That's why I plan on making a yokai video sometime in the future, especially with me being a Nintendo fan and growing up around yokai without really realizing it. So just make sure you're subscribed and have the bell ring so you don't miss out when that video does come out. I also want to mention that in researching for this video, I came across a helpful video in regards to yokai and Yurei by the YouTuber Let's Ask Shogo, so I'll link that video in the description as well. Go check out his channel if you want to learn more about Japanese culture, history, and folklore. Jumping around a bit more, let's talk about Obake, otherwise known as Bakemono. They're the group of yokai known to shapeshift, with Obake literally meaning a thing that changes, referring to a state of transformation or shapeshifting. They aren't just ghosts that can shapeshift, but a wide variety of beings that can change their form. The transformation can be temporary and can be living beings or supernatural entities. Looking a little more in depth at previously mentioned Obake, there's a kitsune, or foxes. They're often seen as tricksters and can shapeshift into humans, especially beautiful women, to deceive or sometimes marry humans. They're known for intelligence and magical abilities, including creating illusions and possessing people. We have the Tanuki or raccoon dogs. They're known for their playful nature, and Tanuki in folklore can shapeshift into humans or inanimate objects. I also found out that according to legends, they can also use their male reproductive organs in various magical ways, so now you have that image in your head too. You're welcome. A couple other Obake are the Bake Neko and Nekomata, or monster cats. A Bake Neko might simply be a cat that has lived long enough to gain supernatural powers, while a Nekomata is a two-tailed cat yokai, considered to be more malevolent. There's also the Tsukumogami that I previously mentioned, which are the tools or objects that have acquired a spirit after existing for a long period of time, usually 100 years. A couple examples of Tsukumogami are the Kasa Obake, which is an umbrella that comes to life, and the Chochin Obake, which is a possessed lantern. There's also tons of other forms that can manifest as Obake, such as living shadows and spirits of trees, rocks, wind, and fire. In folklore, Obake can serve various roles, from tricksters to entities that might punish or test humans. They embody the unpredictability and the supernatural elements of nature in everyday objects, often serving as cautionary tales or to explain the unknown. Next up, I want to talk about the Oni. Like I said earlier, they're basically the demons of Japanese folklore, and yokai as well, and share many similarities to traditional demons in Western religion of folklore. Oni are usually portrayed with large muscular bodies, horns, sharp claws, and often with wild hair. They appear in various colors, with red and blue being the most common, but other colors possible as well. They're usually seen with tusks and fangs, and are sometimes depicted as having 3 toes, 3 fingers, or multiple arms and eyes, emphasizing their non-human nature. Behavior-wise, Oni are considered evil, or at the very least, mischievous. They're known for causing trouble, spreading diseases, and being physically violent towards humans. Even though they can be directly compared to Western demons and even ogres, they carry unique cultural baggage in Japanese stories where they're portrayed as embodying natural forces or human emotions rather than purely evil entities. Some stories of the Oni depict them as guardians of the afterlife, punishing evildoers, serving in hell under Enma, the ruler of the underworld. Some of these stories also suggest Oni were once humans that lived wicked lives, transforming into Oni upon death as a form of punishment or continuation of their malevolent existence. One famous story about Oni involves Shoten Doji, a powerful Oni that terrorized Kyoto, capturing and feasting on humans, only to be defeated by a legendary hero, where this story showcased the Oni's capacity for both terror and, through defeat, a form of redemption or lesson in human virtue. Oni appear in various forms of Japanese culture, from art to theater, like No and Kabuki, where they might represent chaos or evil that heroes must overcome. Oni are seen in festivals like Setsubun, where people throw roasted soybeans to drive away the Oni, symbolizing the expulsion of evil. Over time, Oni have been adapted into various forms of media, including anime, manga, and video games, where they might be depicted with more nuanced characteristics, sometimes even as heroes or anti-heroes. This evolution of their portrayal reflects Japan's changing societal values and the adaptability of Oni as cultural symbols. Nowadays, they can be used in storytelling to symbolize inner demons, societal fears, or even serve as metaphors for dealing with personal or societal values. Moving on from Japanese demons, let's take a look at some spiritual entities connected to Japanese gods. Next on the list are the Raiju. Raiju translates to thunder animal or beast, and Raiju are deeply intertwined with the mythology surrounding Raijin, the god of lightning, thunder, and storms in Shinto religion. Raiju aren't confined to a single form, but are generally depicted as creatures wrapped in or composed of lightning, and unlike most of the other entities on this list, often take the shape of animals like wolves, dogs, foxes, weasels, or even cats. They can also appear as a ball of lightning, embodying the phenomenon of lightning itself. Their bodies might even glow with a white-blue hue, reflecting their association with lightning. Behavior-wise, Raiju are calm, but become highly agitated during thunderstorms, leaping from tree to tree, and are believed to cause lightning strikes where they land or scratch. One interesting behavior habit that they have is that, similar to how the Mare sits on humans while they're asleep and cause nightmares, Raiju apparently sleep in human belly buttons during storms, and the Raiju or Raijin shoot lightning arrows to wake the person, inadvertently harming the person. Just like other yokai, Raiju are sometimes used to explain natural phenomena, in this case lightning strikes and the peculiar patterns of the strikes and the damage caused by lightning. Culturally, Raiju are both feared and revered, symbolizing the unpredictable and powerful nature of storms, with their presence and actions during thunderstorms being seen as omens or signs of divine activity in some tales. Historically, the belief in Raiju was particularly strong during the Edo period in Japan, which lasted from 1603 to 1868. During that time, they weren't just creatures of myth, but subjects of folklore that might have been influenced by sightings of unfamiliar animals, such as a masked palm civet. This also paints Raiju in a similar lens to other cryptids like the Kraken, where the Kraken might have been really a giant squid. However, with the advancement of Western science and technology in Japan, especially during the Meiji period that lasted from 1868 to 1912, explanations for natural phenomena like lightning shifted from mythological explanations to scientific explanations, leading to a decline in the prominence of Raiju. Even though their popularity and belief in their existence has waned over the years, Raiju and references to Raiju have gained new life in various forms of media and culture, such as of course Phasmophobia, Pokemon like Raichu and Raikou, which are both electric-type Pokemon with similar names to Raiju, and with items in gaming named after Raiju having lightning-based powers. And as I was writing the script for the Raiju portion of this video, I realized how insanely broad the Phasmophobia ghost types are. Like, you have your typical spirits and poltergeists, which are something you probably think of when you hear the term ghost, but then you get to things like the Raiju, which are more or less animals with lightning powers, and yokai like sentient umbrellas. But again, the purpose of this video is to talk about the real-life counterparts of the Phasmophobia ghosts and a few other ghostly terms, not just entities exactly the same as Western ghosts. But now, moving back to entities like your stereotypical ghost, we have the Yurei, Goryo, and Onryo. Just like Yurei, Obake, Oni, and Raiju are types of yokai, Goryo and Onryo are types of Yurei. And actually, Goryo are a type of Onryo. But before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about the standard Yurei. Tales of the Yurei date back to the late Heian period in Japanese folklore, which is around 794 to 1185. They're usually depicted as the souls of individuals who have died under unfortunate or violent circumstances, or who have unresolved issues or strong emotions like revenge, love, jealousy, hatred, or sorrow that prevent them from moving on to the afterlife. Yurei are deeply embedded in Japanese culture, just like many other yokai, and have appeared in numerous stories, plays, and modern media like film and manga. They're typically depicted as wearing a white burial kimono with long disheveled black hair, and sometimes like feet floating slightly above the ground, like how most other ghosts are depicted. Going back to their history, the concept of Yureis date back centuries and have been documented in ancient texts like the Kojiki and Nihon Shoki. Like other yokai, they represent themes in Japanese culture, such as justice, morality, and the consequences of human actions, not just horror. There's even rituals like Obon, which are conducted to honor and appease these spirits, ensuring they don't linger as Yurei. Behavior and ability-wise, Yurei are also said to have the ability to move through walls and create illusions and manipulate their environment around them, very similar to normal Western ghosts as well. It's also said that Yurei are active around 2 a.m. to 2:30 a.m., which is believed to be when the veil between the living and the dead is the thinnest. the main differences between Yurei and Western ghosts is usually their depiction and appearance, always having the kimonos and other features I previously mentioned, and the reason for their existence being more defined, along with their deep-rooted ties to Japanese culture. Yureis have specific types as well, each being pretty specific, differentiating them. There's the Ubume, which are spirits of women who died during childbirth, often seen caring for her child, along with Funa Yurei, which are spirits associated with sea tragedies, known to haunt or seek help from sailors. This is where we transition to the Onryo and Goryo, as there are two other types of Yurei. Onryo are basically Yurei that are driven by a strong sense of vengeance, hatred, anger, or jealousy. Pretty much strong negative emotions. Other reasons for their existence is an unjust or cruel death. Their whole purpose is basically for revenge or to right a wrong. Onryo are said to be very powerful and capable of influencing the physical world to a significant extent, causing disasters, cursing people, harming them, or even causing death. They don't only do this to people who wrong them in life, but to anybody they encounter. In cultural depictions, especially in kabuki theater and modern horror films, Onryo often appear as women dressed in white with long black hair like the standard Yurei, and sometimes have physical signs of their death or suffering. Stories of the Onryo significantly influenced Japanese literature, theater, and cinema. One of the most famous Onryo is Oiwa from the story Yotsuya Kaiden, a tale of betrayal and revenge that has been adapted into numerous films and plays. It's also influenced modern and international horror, with characters like Sadako in the Ring movies being a modern interpretation of the Onryo. But now, let's talk about the Goryo, a subset of the Onryo. Putting it simply, Goryo or Onryo that were once part of a noble class when they died. Basically, the spirits or ghosts of aristocrats or other high-status individuals who died in a state of anger, resentment, or under tragic circumstances. I'm not going to spend too much time with them though, since they pretty much have the same characteristics as Onryo. The other few differences they have are that Goryo might be seen in traditional or historical attire, representing their noble status, as well as a means of appeasing them. Traditionally, to calm or appease Goryo, rituals and festivals might be held, or they might be deified and enshrined as a god, in hopes of turning their vengeance into protection or blessings. This practice was both religious and political, and can be seen with figures like the poet and politician Sugawara no Michizan, deifying him as Tenjin, the Shinto god of learning. And now, we move on from the Japanese entities on the Phasmophobia ghost list. Before we move on to the rest of the ghosts on the list, there are 4 terms I want to spend a few minutes on, 2 of which I mentioned at the start of the video, specters and ghouls. The other 2 terms are used in Phasmophobia as evidence but aren't on the actual list. These 2 are ghost orbs and cursed objects. First, let's touch on specters. As I said earlier in the video, the term specter has been used pretty interchangeably with ghosts and spirits, but there are a few differences that help us categorize these entities. In appearance, specters are usually depicted as ethereal, shadowy, or nearly transparent beings. Some depictions also show them as having skeletal or decayed design, rather than more human. Specters also seem to be more malevolent or sinister behavior-wise, reflecting their appearance, but some stories say that they're aware that they're dead, compared to some other ghosts that might not be, and these stories involve specters trying to convey a message or attempting to resolve something from when they were alive. Examples of which being warning the living, seeking help to solve their murder, or wishing to be acknowledged, but the main thing to note about them would probably be that they look more dead and supernatural than standard ghosts. Let's talk about ghouls now. The term ghoul is another one I heard used fairly interchangeably with ghosts and spirits, but it does have more distinct differences. Ghouls originate from the ancient Arabic folklore and religion, where they're described as demonic beings or monstrous humanoids associated with graveyards and the consumption of human flesh. The term ghoul also comes from the Arabic term ghoul, literally meaning demon, and is often connected with the Jinn, believed to be the offspring of Iblis, the Islamic equivalent of the devil. Ghouls are also depicted as shapeshifters, capable of assuming various forms to deceive or lure travelers in desolate places, particularly deserts. So you can see how so many of these entities across different cultures have so many similarities, like Obake and ghouls being able to shapeshift, ghouls and zombies being depicted as consuming human flesh, ghouls literally translating to demons, and being connected to Jinn. While from one angle you could say it's boring how all these entities are pretty much the same, I draw a different opinion, saying it's super interesting that so many cultures and religions that have never interacted in the past talk about these similar creatures. It makes you really wonder if these entities do exist and they witness them. They could all be talking about the same entity, just with small details different based on cultural explanations and witness descriptions. It's kind of like how a ton of different cultures built pyramids. Makes you wonder if there's something more going on we don't know about. But now getting back to Phasmophobia terminology, let's talk about ghost orbs. Ghost orbs are pretty interesting as they don't have a humanoid or animalistic form like the other entities on this list have, but typically appear as small spherical white or translucent balls of light in photographs or videos. There's actually a photo I'm in from years back that some relatives of mine believe a ghost orb is in as well. There's a car light right by where the orb is, but doesn't line up with where the headlights would be shining if the car was even on. So I'm not sure what the explanation for it truly could be. The explanation for what spirit orbs are, according to paranormal researchers and investigators, is that they're the energy of deceased beings or residual energy present in the environment. Some theories suggest orbs are just the first stage of a ghost manifesting, where it's easier for spirits to appear as spheres rather than full-on apparitions. Some explanations from the views of skeptics suggest dust particles, lens flares from cameras, or small bugs that could be the cause of these ghost orbs, but some witnesses claim to see faces and tails on orbs, or claim that they move in ways that seem intelligent, so it's up in the air and can vary from case to case what the true explanations behind ghost orbs are. And now for the last term before we continue on to the main list, are cursed objects. Cursed items are objects believed to bring bad luck, misfortune, or some type of negative influence upon the person who owns them, touches them, or is in some way associated with them. The way cursed objects usually come about is through their involvement in tragic events, sacrilege, or by deliberately being hexed by someone with magical or supernatural powers. There's been a wide variety of cursed objects seen throughout history around the world. There's objects like the Hope Diamond and the cursed mirror of Myrtle's plantation, known for allegedly bringing misfortune to their owners. Even though I wouldn't call them objects, there's curses associated with Egyptian mummies and disturbing the rest, seen with Tutankhamun's tomb. There's cursed dolls like the Robert and Annabelle dolls, which are also said to be possessed or haunted, if you will, influencing events around them. There's also been tons of things like rings, paintings, or even chairs throughout history that are said to be cursed. So it's not that these cursed objects are necessarily all possessed by spirits of the undead or demons or anything like that, even though it's said that they can be possessed, but it's said they can be imbued with some supernatural energy that causes misfortune to their owners. But now getting back to the list, we have 7 terms left, and I want to do a little more jumping around for the rest of them. The next term from the list are the twins. The twins are probably the most unique ghost type on the list, as they don't actually have a real-life counterpart in a ghostly sense. Like, obviously twins exist in real life, but there isn't a ghost called the twins in real life or anything like that. Probably the main thing the twins take inspiration from are the Grady twins in the movie The Shining, where they have a ghostly, haunting, synchronized presence, but aren't really present for most of the movie. That's another movie to add to the Halloween watch list, by the way. Besides that, we don't have much else to go off of for the twins, but twins in real life are thought to have special, almost mystical connection with each other, and Phasmophobia might have also drawn inspiration from that, so I'll touch on this connection they have. Many believe twins can communicate telepathically, sharing thoughts, feelings, or sensations without speaking. There's been stories where twins report knowing when the other is in pain, in danger, or when something significant happens to them, despite the distance separating them. This telepathy isn't necessarily them speaking to each other with words in their heads and having conversations like that, but more along the lines of sensing thoughts and feelings. This also aligns with twin synchronicity, where twins perform identical actions or make the same choices independently when they aren't in contact with each other. This could range from buying the same items at a store and saying the same words at the same time, all the way to experiencing similar life events simultaneously. Moving on to spiritual aspects of twins, there are some cultures that believe twins share a soul or have souls that are deeply connected, believing that a single soul split into 2 bodies causing the twins. There's also some cultures that see twins as omens, either good or bad, or attributed with powers or curses, and even believe that they have the ability to predict the weather or have healing powers. Since there isn't much else for them in the ghostly sense, let's move on. Next up, let's talk about the Hantu. Hantu is a term from Malay culture which includes Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Brunei, and parts of Thailand and the Philippines, referring to spirits or ghosts, and is basically an umbrella term like the yokai, as it can refer to spirits of the dead, nature spirits, or demons. The concept of spirits and ghosts in Malay folklore predates the arrival of Islam in the region, which occurred around the 13th to 14th centuries, where there were beliefs about spirits that inhabited natural elements like trees, rivers, and mountains. These spirits could be benevolent or malevolent and would later be known as Hantu. As Islam spread around the region, the concept of Hantu adapted to fit within the Islamic framework, where Jinn might be conflated and compared with the Hantu, coexisting in the culture. So that's just another tie-in showing how so many of these entities are similar and connected. There's multiple types of Hantu, such as the Hantu Rhea, which is considered to be one of the mightiest demons, and takes the appearance of the black magic practitioner that summons it as a familiar. There's a Hantu Air, which are spirits that inhabit bodies of water. There's a Hantu Tingi, which basically means tall ghost and is associated with tall trees or places. There's a Penangal, which is a female ghost that can detach her head from her body and is known to prey on pregnant women or newborns. The Pokang, which is a ghost wrapped in a white shroud representing a soul trapped due to unfinished business or improper burial. And the Toil, which is a child spirit invoked for mischievous deeds or to steal. One thing I like about these different entities like the Hantu and Yokai is how specific each one is. Like in America, we have ghosts, and it's just a broad term mainly associated with spirits of the dead, but the others are just more unique. But continuing on with the Hantu, these spirits are part of a rich tapestry of folklore that blends animistic, Hindu, Buddhist, and Islamic influences. Just like other entities we've covered, Hantus serve various functions from explaining natural phenomena to reinforcing cultural taboos and morals. There's a cultural belief in many parts of Southeast Asia where spirits like Hantu are not just feared, but respected. Offerings, prayers, rituals are performed to appease or honor these spirits, just like others from the list. In essence, Hantu encapsulate a broad spectrum of paranormal beings in Southeast Asian folklore, deeply embedded in cultural narratives, yet they've also been adapted and live on in modern media and daily discourse, often blending fear, fascination, and humor. Our next ghost is the final one on this list from the Asian region of the world. This is the Thaye. The Thaye, or as they're sometimes known, the Thaye, are spirits of the deceased who are considered evil or sinful during their lifetime. It's believed that when they were previously alive, they led immoral lives, perhaps not fulfilling their religious duties or having committed misdeeds, with their afterlife being a form of punishment for their earthly actions. Thaye also have a unique appearance compared to most of the other ghosts on this list, as they're often depicted with large ears, long tongues, and tusk-like teeth, with their grotesque appearance reflecting their malevolent nature. They are also believed to enter human settlements, particularly at noon or during the night. They're not typically viewed as highly dangerous, but are known to cause minor ailments or disturbances, with their presence not usually associated with severe harm or death. In Burmese culture, the Thaye serve as a reminder of their importances of moral conduct and the consequences of one's actions in life. They're part of a larger pantheon of spirits and supernatural beings in Burmese folklore, which reflects an animistic and Buddhist-influenced worldview, where spirits interact with the human world, influencing health, fortune, and community well-being. While they're generally avoided though, there's also traditional practices, rituals, or offerings to appease them as well. Our next three ghosts are from the European region of the world, with the Myling, Moroi, and Deogen. Tales of the Myling originate in Scandinavian or Nordic folklore, if you will, which, if you don't know, includes countries such as Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Iceland, and the Faroe Islands, and Finland for the Nordic portion. Mylings are said to be the spirits, ghosts, or phantasmal incarnations of children who are unbaptized and often abandoned or murdered by their mothers and then left in the wilderness or hidden, often due to illegitimacy or poverty. So definitely one of the darker ghosts on this list. Myling are known by various names in the region, such as the Utbird in Norwegian or Utborur in Icelandic. They sometimes appear emaciated or wearing tattered clothing reflecting their tragic deaths, but might appear to look as they would have been if they had grown up. Like standard ghosts are known to haunt the areas where their bodies were improperly buried, Mylings are said to cry or scream in the night, trying to lure living people into the wilderness. A common legend involves them jumping onto the backs of lone travelers at night, demanding to be carried into a graveyard so they can be buried properly in hallowed ground. As they near the graveyard, they become increasingly heavy, symbolizing both a physical and emotional burden. Mylings usually seek revenge, primarily against their mothers or those who wronged them, sometimes through haunting or even causing death by leading people astray or through more direct means in folklore tales. The only ways to lay a Myling to rest include giving it a name or finding and burying its remains in consecrated ground. The Myling has left a significant mark on Scandinavian culture, reflecting historical realities like high infant mortality, the stigma of illegitimacy, and the importance of baptism, and serves as a grim reminder of the societal norms and harsh conditions of past times. But next up we have the Moroi. The Moroi originate in Romanian folklore, where the Moroi is a type of vampire or ghost. Similar to the lore behind the Myling, Moroi are said to be the spirits or specters of an unbaptized child, or even a stillborn child. However, interpretations can vary, and they can be seen as the spirits of the dead who didn't receive proper burial rites, leading them to become restless spirits. While they share characteristics with vampires like needing to consume blood, Moroi aren't always depicted as needing to kill in order to feed. They might simply be spectral entities that drain life force or cause mischief, like Revenants, Wraiths, and so many other entities on the list. They might appear as ghostly children or simply as a presence felt rather than seen. Unlike traditional vampires, they might not have a physical body in the conventional sense. Moroi aren't necessarily malevolent either. They might be benign, but could cause trouble due to their unsettled nature. Their actions could range from playing pranks to causing illness or bad luck, or even appearing in dreams. There's also protection methods that one could use to prevent or protect against Moroi, such as the traditional methods of using religious items like crosses, holy water, or ensuring proper burial rites. Simple things like leaving out offerings such as food or milk could work as well, so they're kind of like Santa Claus in that sense. There's also similar entities like the Strigoi in Romanian folklore that are said to have the ability to transform into animals, become invisible, and also drink blood, which is why folklore often blurs the lines between these creatures. The more research I do into all these ghosts, the more I realize how similar they are, so I apologize if any of this sounds repetitive, but it's like I said earlier, it makes you wonder if there's something more going on considering all the different cultures with similar entities in their folklore. And now we move on to the Deogen, otherwise known as the Eyes. It's a legendary ghost said to haunt the Sonian forest in Belgium. It's often described as appearing in the form of a strange colored fog, which might appear greenish, gray, orange, or white. Within this fog, small shadowy figures are sometimes seen darting about, particularly by drivers passing through the area, and laughter can be heard from this fog. With the reports of these Deogen, bloody handprints can be seen appearing on car windows, which soon disappear and can cause vehicles to veer off the road. It's said that something within the fog watches observers, implying a presence of eyes or a staring entity, giving it the name the Eyes. The legend of the Deogen reportedly began with a series of tragic events documented in the book De Kinderen van het Bezetten Bos, which translates to The Children of the Haunted Forest. This book was published in 1937 and recounts the discovery of young children's bodies in the forest, suggesting the murders might be linked to the Deogen's lore. However, there's debate about the authenticity of the book and its events, with some considering it to be fiction or an urban legend that has grown over time through internet culture. The Deogen is also different than other entities on this list, as it appears to be one entity rather than multiple, so it's harder to determine if there's any credibility to existence compared to some of the others on this list, but that's okay, because its backstory is pretty interesting and has some uniqueness to it. But now, we reach the final entity for this video, and one that I find pretty fascinating and terrifying, the Mimic. In the paranormal context, the term mimic generally refers to an entity or spirit that can replicate or mimic the appearance, voice, or behavior of other individuals, often with the intention to deceive or manipulate. The idea of entities that can change the form or mimic others isn't new and can be traced back through various mythologies and folklore. There's creatures like the doppelganger in European folklore, skinwalkers in Native American lore, along with the previously mentioned Obake and ghouls that all share traits with what might be termed a mimic. The primary function of a mimic in paranormal lore is to deceive people. They might take on the form or voice of someone known to the person they're interacting with, which can be super unsettling considering the context. They might use these tactics to lure someone into a trap, to hide their true nature, or to enact some form of psychological manipulation. Mimics might also be described as a spirit or entity that has learned or absorbed behaviors from its environment or previous encounters, which could be due to an intelligent haunting, where the ghost or spirit has gained some form of consciousness or memory from those it has observed or interacted with. Mimics can be seen in various forms of media as well, ranging from Dungeons and Dragons, where it can change its body into inanimate objects like chess to entrap victims, Five Nights at Freddy's, where it's an animatronic that can copy the movements of things it sees, as well as the analog horror series Vita Carnis, where it's a creature that resembles a human without skin and eats humans. There's also a Yu-Gi-Oh archetype called Mimighoul that's based around the mimics that I just want to include for fun. Encounters with mimics can have profound psychological effects, instilling fear, confusion, or even providing comfort in cases if the mimicry is benign or protective in nature. But personally, mimics might just be the most terrifying entity on this list next to demons. Cognito hazard warning for any of you who might be sensitive. Like, imagine any scenario you're in, whether you're alone or with people, in a city, in the woods, at work or school, anything at all. Anything around you could secretly be a mimic, waiting for the perfect opportunity to attack you, or it could disguise themselves as another human and you wouldn't even know. It falls in line with the idea behind the uncanny valley, where there's a sense of uneasiness surrounding things that look like human but are slightly off. Some theorists speculate that the reason we get a sense of unease or repulsion to seeing things like this is because in the distant past, there's a predator that mimicked humans to get closer to us, triggering our primal fight or flight instincts. So that's just absolutely lovely to think about. But with that, we have completed the Phasmophobia ghost list along with a few other ghost terms added, putting us at over 30 ghost types that might be haunting you. Before we get to the outro and wrap things up though, I want to compare these terms to the Phasmophobia versions like I said I would do at the start of the video. In Phasmophobia, there aren't really defined models for each ghost, so we can't really compare the physical appearance, just some of the behavioral traits ghosts exhibit, so keep that in mind. I'll either give these ghosts a pass or fail for how well they're represented in Phasmophobia. Spirits in Phasmophobia are the baseline ghosts with no real defining traits, strengths, or abilities, which fits as spirits are a very general broad term in real life, so I give them a pass. The defining characteristics of wraiths in Phasmophobia is that they won't step in salt piles and leave behind footprints, and they won't float off of the ground or walk their walls, but none of those characteristics align with their real life counterparts as far as I can tell, considering they seem to be ethereal and drain life force in real life, so I give the wraith a fail. For phantoms, they don't appear on cameras in Phasmophobia, which fits considering their real-life counterparts are seen more as hallucinations and aren't physically present, so they wouldn't show up on camera, so I give this one a pass. Both Poltergeists in Phasmophobia in real life are known to interact with the environment and throw items, so I give them a pass. Banshees are another ghost type with an easy comparison, as they're known to sing and have a loud cry when using the parabolic microphone on them in Phasmophobia, so they get a pass as well. The only connection Jinn have between Phasmophobia and their real-life counterparts is that they can both move fast, so I'd have to give them a fail since that isn't really enough for me personally, considering all the other things Jinns can do. Since Mares in real life are known to be the most active at night, and in Phasmophobia are more active when it's dark, I'll barely give them a pass. For Revenants, I'm gonna have to give them a fail though, considering their defining characteristic in Phasmophobia is moving quickly, while in real life they're known for draining life energy and being seen as vampires, so there really isn't any similarities. In Phasmophobia, you can use a summoning circle to summon ghosts, and when you summon shades, they can appear as a black shadowy form, lining up with how they appear the same way in real life, so I give them a pass. In Phasmophobia, demons are the most aggressive ghost type and fear the crucifix in the game, so considering that lines up pretty well with their evil nature in real life, they get a pass too. Putting the Japanese ghost types together again, the Yurei, Yokai, Goryo, and Onryo don't really share any similar characteristics between Phasmophobia and real life, so I'm giving them each a fail. But Oni and Phasmophobia in real life are both known to be mischievous, so they get a pass. Obake are shapeshifters in real life and can sometimes generate unique fingerprints in Phasmophobia with a different amount of fingers depending on where the fingerprints are found and can change their ghost model, so they get a big pass from me. And Raiju and Phasmophobia thrive on electricity, aligning with their connection to electricity in real life, so they get a pass as well. In Phasmophobia, Hantu thrive in colder environments, but in real life they don't have a connection to the cold. Considering that Hantu is an umbrella term encompassing multiple spirits, it's possible that there might be a type of Hantu that fits this description, but for now I have to give them a fail. Mylings are known to cry out or scream in real life, and are fairly vocal in Phasmophobia, so for that I'll give them a pass. With the twins, I have to say that it's not applicable since there isn't a real-life ghost to compare them to, but with the theory that twins share one soul, I'll give them a pass since they're technically one ghost in Phasmophobia. Mimics also technically don't have a real-life counterpart besides being based on other entities that shapeshift, but since they can mimic other ghosts in Phasmophobia, I'll give them a pass too. Moroi and Phasmophobia are known to drain sanity of players and in real life drain the life force of people, so that's a close enough comparison to give them a pass. In Phasmophobia, when ghosts hunt you, you can hide to prevent them from killing you, but you can't hide from the Deogen, just wait out until the hunt. And in real life, they're also known as the Eyes, always watching you, so they get a pass as well considering they can always see you. And finally, the Thaye will unfortunately get a fail for me due to the fact in Phasmophobia, they're known to have an aging effect, but more active at the start of the hunt and weaker as it goes on, but does not have a real life comparison with those traits. But you guys will have to let me know how you feel I did with my rating on the comparison of these ghosts in the comments down below. But if you guys have watched this long into the video, I just want to thank you for watching. I can already tell based on the amount I've written for this script that it'll be the longest video I've made on this channel, and honestly I'd wager it'll turn out to be longer than any video I've made on my gaming channel as well, besides the streams. So I hope you guys enjoy this longer type of video. I've been spending pretty much all my free time working on this video when I haven't been streaming on my gaming channel or working on the newest video I released for that channel, so I just really hope you guys enjoyed this Halloween video, and I hope I was respectful and did justice to all these entities and their different cultural, religious, and folklore backgrounds. As I've said before on this channel, I work a full-time job and have other commitments that take precedence over this channel for the time being, so please understand and excuse my lack of uploads. I'm going to push to upload at least one video a month for both channels, but considering the length of time it takes me to research for these videos, write the script, record, edit, and upload the videos, especially with the length of some of these, and especially everything else I have going on, that might have to be one video every 2 months, so please be patient. If you want to see my newest video on my gaming channel, I have that linked to all of this video, I think somewhere up there, as well as in the description, so go check that out. I stream multiple times a week there too, including Nintendo, Fortnite, and horror content, so that's more content if you're looking for more from me, and I'd greatly appreciate if you subscribe to that channel. In terms of this channel, I have 9 different video scripts I've started, a couple of which I've talked about before, such as the Bigfoot video and the second Fearsome Critters video, so if you don't want to miss out when those come out, subscribe to this channel and ring the bell so you get notified when I upload, and please like the video as well so the YouTube algorithm sees that people enjoy my video. Liking and subscribing helps my channel grow immensely, and the more it grows, the more higher quality content I can provide for you guys, so it's a win-win for everyone. And feel free to share both my channels with your friends if you think it's something they might enjoy as well. Make sure to leave a comment if there's any important details I missed regarding these entities, and if there's any other paranormal entities you want to see me cover in the future, along with any other video topics you want to see me cover. But since this video is pretty long, I don't want to hold you guys up any longer, so thank you guys one more time, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Even though I wouldn't call them objects, there's curses associated with Egyptian mummies and disturbing the rest, seen with Tutankhamun, Tutankhamun's. Even though I wouldn't call them objects, there's curses Tutankhamun's. Even though I wouldn't call them objects, there's curses associated with Egyptian mummies and disturbing the rest, seen with Tutankhamun's tomb. There's curse.